If I can find it, I will start it. Benefiting the Students, Not the Profession. How Teaching Should Reflect Society by Kelly Congrove. In the introduction, I was trying to figure out one clear way to define a 21st century learner. I just see that it says leaner, so I do apologize. I'll fix it later. There are many things that the 21st century learner is. The first thing is that they're savvy. They have endless information, they have endless devices they can look up this information on, and they're in constant communication with their friends, with their peers, with their coworkers, with teachers, with family. It's constantly surrounding themselves with the outside world. So to them, the future really does seem endless. They can truly be anything they can set their minds or their fingers to. They can really look and have an abundance of information and be properly prepared to make thoughtful decisions and to really go out there into the world and leave secondary education and focus on their future. The problem with that is that the 21st century learner also have an abundance of vices. There are different stresses from previous generations I'm not saying that the previous generations did not stress. I'm saying that the stresses are different from the previous generations in the 21st century learner. Social media sets new standards. They set new standards of stresses. Students are paying attention to different things. They're constantly paying attention to what their peers are doing. And also, by them being so self-absorbed, they tend to ignore past technology and concepts. And looking at the literature review that was done for this assignment, the literature was mainly positive. I didn't see a single article that said technology is bad and that the classroom should not advance as society is advancing. But I did see a lot of information on the traditional classroom versus the flipped classroom. And so I did separate these two because I do think that there's a couple of things in there that lead up to the flipped classroom. But the traditional classroom, a lot of articles said that they just don't work, that they don't have the single aspect that a student needs in order to prepare then. I did read in one article, though, that the traditional classroom should not be completely excluded from a teaching style, because there are a lot of college universities, there's a lot of career centers and a lot of careers, period, that follow the traditional classroom effect. And so sometimes you just need to sit at a desk and take the assessment and show what you know through a worksheet or whatever. But one of the articles stated that the teaching style actually affects learning. That a child or a student may not just fully accept, fully absorb, and fully understand a teaching style. So if they're so used to the flipped classroom aspect that they're into projects and they're into alternative learning styles, then the traditional classroom won't work for them just based off the teaching style. And then there's another thing that led into the classroom environment, that the aesthetics of the classroom can actually affect the learning outcome of the students. How a classroom is set up, how a classroom looks, how it is structured in the day can actually affect the outcome of the student's grade. And I thought that was very interesting, that just by their surroundings, I had heard in previous talks and stuff that if a student is to take a test, they shouldn't do anything different. They should sit in the same seat. They should not listen to music. They should pay full attention and be in the same kind of atmosphere, and they'll tend to remember and retain more information because they're in similar surroundings. But in the classroom environment, how that could actually affect the student's outcome was very interesting to me. We talked a lot about flipped classrooms. I talked a lot about it in my essay. In the flipped classrooms, it had a lot to do with the younger levels, and so I teach 11th grade, and so a lot of the children are used to a traditional classroom. But I was very interested, and so I was not convinced that it could be one or the other. I think it needs to be a good mixture of both to make sure that you are catering to all types of learners and all students. It did talk a lot about stress levels of the 21st century learner. I talked about how they're constantly comparing each other. They're setting standards with the social media. They're comparing themselves. They're comparing their friends. They're comparing their lifestyle. They're trying to mimic their lifestyle of others, and it just causes a whole new level of stress. And it's constant. It's not something that it's every once in a while. It's whenever they see it in a blue moon or whenever they see a certain person. It is constant. It is in their face, and it's a choice that they're making. Also talked about the 21st century learner is against a new economy, that the economy is not so accepting of the new generation of workers as they were previously. And that's partly because people are living longer, people are working longer, and they're doing all of these things. And so the 21st century learner, it can go either two ways. Either they're going to hire these people coming out of school, or because they're cheap, or they're going to have to demand that they have a little bit of experience, which is hard. And we're going to talk about a little bit of that later. Also, they talked a lot about the new curriculum. I have juniors, and so this group of juniors that I have, they have taken 3 different types of tests in 3 years. They've taken the PARCC test, the AIR test, and this year they took the ACT. So curriculum's changing all the time, and so the 21st century learner has to be adaptable to the new curriculum, and as well as the teacher, which can be kind of difficult, which we're going to talk about later. In section 1, the thesis statement that I had is the 21st century learner is not only one who, as the world has the world of information at hand, they are also adaptable, capable, and result-minded persons. And I figured that this needs to be adaptable as well, because I think the 21st century learner is always changing, and it's not going to cater just to one person. So I didn't know how to differentiate a thesis statement to fully identify characteristics because they're all different. But I had to adapt, just like I believe the 21st century learner does. They have information at their fingertips. There's more information given to students than ever. They have the ability to look up whatever they want, whenever they want, and they do. A lot of times in class, if they don't know the answer, it's nothing to say, oh, I don't know, let's go look that up, and then in 5 seconds we know the answer. There's no encyclopedias in my room. There's now no dictionaries. I think I have one, just because they can look them up on their handheld devices, their phones, their iPads, whatever. And so their characteristics are highlighted by convenience. They look things up when it's an instant interest to them. It's also, serves as a vice, because if they look at it, if it's interesting to look up, then they look it up. But if they are obtaining more information, then they retain their information differently. So it's kind of like they know a lot of nonsense questions or nonsense statements and information, and they don't really save room for other stuff. They keep the teacher on his or her toes. They always are asked questions. They're able to look up, and they're able to spot inconsistencies, better than, hounds can do rabbits. I don't know a better analogy for that, but that's what it is. An extra learning, and they have extra learning and extra independence. And a lot of them are very interested in creating their own curriculum, which is very interesting. They are capable. They're no longer looking at parents for guidance. This is the big thing with the juniors that I have, because they have questions, but they're trying to figure it out on their own, which is good sometimes, which is not so good sometimes. But they have multiple examples of people they strive to be. They have multiple influences. They're able to look up more job opportunities. But it can also create non-resistant or realistic goals. In my essay that I wrote, or in my research paper, we came across information about the influx of lawyers in the past, I think it's about 5 or 10 years, that there are more lawyers coming out than there are jobs. And it's kind of, the kids can be a lawyer, they can understand what it takes to be a lawyer, they can do the work to be a lawyer, but the job market can't hold that many lawyers. And there was actually a lawsuit against a university that was giving false information that lawyers are in need, and so a lot of people are going to law school and doing all of that, and they come out and they can't find a job, and they were giving wrong information. We also have something called entry-level complainers. A lot of kids, when they want to do the work, they think that they're just going to make it. They don't think about the process. They think more about the end goal, which we're going to get to soon. Because they're result-minded individuals. They're always looking at the end result rather than the process. They don't want the entry-level job. They want to be the manager, the supervisor, the boss. And so they have a foggy portrayal of themselves. Sometimes they just think they're better than previous generations. They think they're better than their boss. They think they can do the job better. And a lot of that had to do with social media, that people just talk themselves up. So they might be too blinded by media to understand that they have to go through the process in order to get to the end result. In section 2, will the traditional classroom help or hinder the 21st century learner? I believe that traditional classrooms, it's kind of hard to understand. In my essay, I said that it was bad, and I still agree. But the traditional classroom right now for 11th grade actually helps my students. And the example that I gave is the paper versus pencil debate. We did the state test last year. We're the only school district in the entire county to have the paper-based test instead of the electronic-based test. And our scores were 20 points higher than other schools. The other schools had a major dip in their achievement, and we were still right where we were because we had a similar format, which I found to be very interesting. We are in talks of a tech upgrade in my school district. They want to go to a one-to-one classroom. We've had a tech upgrade in my classroom. I've decided that I want to do virtual classrooms, which I'm going to talk about later. But we've had tensions. Teachers, rather than technology, are the result of the tension that I'm seeing, because the teachers are the ones that are fighting the technology. We've actually had teachers that had meetings that they want to get rid of some of the technology because they didn't want to take the time to learn it. And also we have students against technology too, because they were used to getting away with a lot more stuff than what they are now. We have students that used to get away with plagiarism, and now with sources like Turnitin.com or a simple Google search, we can search places in the internet that they get their information. And so the students actually fight against it, and we can show them, point blank that, yeah, they didn't make that up. They had, the plagiarism checker caught it. And so they're starting to see results of that. In 10 years, that won't be a problem because the students will be used to it. But right now, since technology is increasing, it's causing a little bit of tension. The changes that I'm seeing, we're having a curriculum upgrade. And also, we talked a lot about online institutions because this entire class is online. We had a Facebook page, and so that inspired me to do more Google Classroom work so the students can get used to things like Blackboard and not be surprised whenever they get to college. In section 3, the technology in my classroom, one of the things that I wanted to do was a virtual classroom. And I actually got this idea from a mentor of mine. She had an AP class on Facebook. She had a student with an extended illness, and the student still wanted to take the AP class, and so she would just simply record it. She had an iPad. She would record the class and then post it on their closed Facebook page. And it was really neat to see that, students can go back and relearn some things when they're preparing for the test. All the videos were there, and so they can actually sit through the lessons again. We had Google Classroom in my class, which the students really liked. One of the things that I was interested in doing was games with technology. I'm not very good at finding how to play games. So that's one of the things that I'm looking into. We're going to do a podcast next year. We've already done podcasts in my journalism class, which are very interesting. And they're funny. I mean, I have good kids, and so they have funny topics for their podcasts, but it's just entertaining to hear them talk. So I thought it might be entertaining to have, instead of a movie review or a movie review, a book review or a short story review. And have the students do that. Also, we looked into Edmodo, which is kind of like a Facebook class, and also virtual field trips. We actually did one of these recently because I was looking it up. And so we're reading The Great Gatsby, and we looked up all the things on Gatsby Lane. Overall, maybe a traditional classroom doesn't work. Flipped is needed for true differentiation, but there has to be a good balance of both. There has to be a good balance both for the teacher and the student's sake, in order to succeed, at least in school, based on the assessments that we have to give our students. Everyone needs to embrace updated curriculum and technology. The students need to be on board with learning it. The teachers need to be on board with learning it. And there needs to be an understanding that there's education and technology that's there for educational uses, and to kind of save a little space in their brain, rather than just Twitter and Instagram. Classrooms should be ever changing to fit the student need. That we need to be adaptable, and we have to be able to look at the technology rather than just having the students kind of guide us through it whenever it comes up. So that is it. Thank you.